I want to take a look at some of the conditions of the Gazans who are relying on UNRWA and what Netanyahu had to say, and then we'll pick up on that if that's okay.
Elsewhere, those who have survived the fighting are awash with despair.
There are no blankets or clothes. The rain has drowned us. There are no beds, no clothes, no warmth, and not even food for the children to eat.
Heavy rain in the north has flooded the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza City. 85% of Gaza's population have been forced from their homes, but they can't survive like this indefinitely.
The weather is making conditions so difficult for us. As you can see, all our homes are made of plastic or tents. They can't withstand these storms. We don't have dry blankets or clothes for our children.
Some military analysts suggest Hamas has regained a foothold around Gaza City. Given Israel's renewed attacks in the area, they could be right. The Palestinian Red Crescent has released new footage of what it says are medics transporting 16 bodies to a Gaza City hospital after a house in the city centre was targeted. The UN Secretary-General has held an urgent meeting with donor countries to try to renew support for its embattled Palestinian Refugee Agency. Several nations withdrew financial backing after allegations some UNRWA staff were linked to the October 7 Hamas attacks. The UN says medical supplies are running dangerously low and a quarter of the population are on the brink of starvation.
UNRWA is the backbone of all humanitarian response in Gaza. I appeal to all member states to guarantee the continuity of UNRWA's life-saving work. Excellencies, the humanitarian system in Gaza is collapsing. I'm extremely concerned by the inhumane conditions faced by Gaza's 2.2 million people as they struggle to survive without any of the basics. Everyone in Gaza is hungry, while 500,000 grapple with catastrophic levels of food insecurity.
Major donor country Norway has urged other nations to reconsider as a matter of urgency as the death toll keeps rising. Melinda Nusafora, TRT World.
Okay, this is what Netanyahu had to say, because the dismantling of UNRWA has been a long-time goal of the Israeli state.
And I think it's time that the international community and the UN itself understand that UNRWA's mission has to end. UNRWA is self-perpetuating. It is self-perpetuating also in its desire to keep alive the Palestinian refugee issue. And we need to get other UN agencies and other aid agencies replacing UNRWA if we're going to solve the problem of Gaza as we intend to do.
So according to Netanyahu, we can trust them. They're going to solve the problem. We don't need UNRWA.
Well, personally, I think the Houthis need to understand that Prime Minister Netanyahu's mission needs to end. But we'll move on from there. So, it was originally reported that there were 12 Hamas members working for UNRWA that were involved on October 7th. Today, Sky News reports it was actually 6 or less. They put it at 4 or 5.
Now, this is in an agency of what, 13,000 people?
13,000 employees. Now, all that shows is Hamas militants had day jobs. That's all. That's not new. I'm not sure why anyone would laugh at that. I'm sure there were Hamas members who worked in bakeries. I'm sure there were Hamas members who worked in banks. I'm sure there were Hamas members who worked in every corner of of Gazan life. That's all it shows. Has there even been an allegation? Has there even been an allegation that UNRWA, for your listeners, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, has there even been an allegation that UNRWA was privy to the Hamas mission? No, the allegation has never been made. So let's take a simple example. Let's say I teach at City University of New York, And it turns out some of the Israeli students at the City University of New York, they committed war crimes in Gaza. I think that's perfectly possible. I think actually it's likely. Okay? So then what does the city council do? It decides to defund City University of New York. Does that make any logical sense?
Well, it was also reported, actually, in the Times. They were quoting members of other relief agencies saying, in the past, donors have continued to fund relief agencies where they had proven criminal members in the agency who were being tried for serious crimes, and they didn't defund them. So why are they defunding this particular agency?
There are three reasons. Number one, they wanted to deflect from the ICJ.
Well, that's another thing. They announced this the day after the ruling.
Yeah. Actually, it was reported the same day. The morning was the ICJ decision, and by the afternoon, it was UNRWA. ICJ decision saying Israel was plausibly committing genocide, immediately vanished. Vanished like in the blink of an eye, and all you heard day in and day out was about UNRWA. So one purpose was clearly to divert attention from the ICJ ruling. A second reason was because they're sadists. That's not using hyperbolic language. They were so angry at the ICJ ruling because you have to bear in mind the obvious. Under international law, according to the Genocide Convention, it's a crime to be complicitous in genocide. It's not just a crime. There are various aspects. You can be committing genocide. You can be inciting genocide. You can be in complicity with genocide. If, in fact, Israel's committing genocide, then all those countries which support Israel, supply it with weapons, supply it with financial support, they are all in complicity with genocide, which is also a crime according to the Genocide Convention. So they were so angry, in such a fury at the ICJ ruling, but they're too civilized, because we're talking about the enlightened West. They're too civilized to directly attack the ICJ. And instead, like sadists who derive a certain pleasure from kicking in the teeth a homeless person laying on the ground, they decided to attack UNRWA. Because UNRWA's head, Philippe Lazzarini, happens to be a decent guy. And when the American judge read the ruling, she quoted Lazzarini not once, she quoted him twice on the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. So he and UNRWA, they have to be punished because these sadists, they couldn't attack the ICJ. That's not civilized. We believe in the rule of law. So instead, you know what we'll do? We'll starve the children of Gaza. That's a fact. People don't want to hear these things. They think it's all exaggeration. Half of Gaza's population is children. When you hear about Gaza, bear in mind, 1 of every 2 Gazans is a child. And now the West, in its furious revenge, will starve the children of Gaza. That's what they're doing. Right now, 1/4 of the population, they say, is facing famine conditions. That is, starved to death. And exactly at that moment, the Western powers the US, the UK, Canada, Australia. I forgot the others now.
Well, it's 12 countries.
Yeah, now it's a very long list. I know it keeps getting longer.
Germany.
Germany. Well, for Germany, this is in their DNA, starving people. So they decided, right? Well, the reason they were angry at the ICJ opinion is because they want the monopoly on genocide. They're upset. They're upset that the Israelis are stealing their monopoly.
Israel's
they
in
moved
on
with
their
such
act.
speed to defund UNRWA too, because the line out of our State Department today, as I understand, was that UNRWA apparently reported some of their own members on Wednesday, meaning the Wednesday before the ICJ ruling, which was on a Friday. So they said they looked into it Thursday, and then they said, okay, we're defunding on Friday. Look at the speed with which they moved to starve the children in Gaza. Whereas we still don't have follow-ups as to what Israel has to say for itself after killing a journalist in Lebanon back in October, right? Matthew Miller comes up, he says, "Oh yeah, we're looking into that." That was more than 3 months ago by now. No follow-up in 90 days whenever Israel does something. When it comes time to defund refugee aid, less than 48 hours, done.
No. You're way off. You're really underestimating our country. Very unpatriotic.
Yes, well, I've been accused of that before.
There are about 25,000 people dead, 12,000 of them children. There's been a ruling by the International Court of Justice, including the American judge, that Israel is plausibly committing genocide. It's not like we didn't do anything. That's not true. We continue to fund it. We're continuing to fund the genocide. We continue to fund the genocide. And who do we defund? We defund the agency that's trying to prevent mass starvation in Gaza. And then we hear today that President Biden made a bold move. Bold! It was so daring, it made my heart palpitate. He signed an executive order penalizing 4 Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Oh my God. And then all the pundits are going to wonder, why won't those Arab Americans support Biden? He punished 4 Israeli settlers. But the fact that he also punished the starving children, well, there are 3 levels. There's hunger, starvation, and then famine. And a quarter of the population now, which is to say, for those of you who care about mathematics, more than 250,000 children will quite likely are now facing the prospect of famine as the United States cuts the last relief agency for those kids in Gaza. It's just breathtaking.
Now,
and day after day, we hear about these 4 or 5 Hamas members who were involved, allegedly. No proof has been given at all. None. Just like that Hamas command and control center under Al-Shifa, which turned out to be a tunnel, according to Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, a tunnel that Israel built. And all they could find there was 2 toilets. No, 2 flushing toilets. Now, you might laugh. And I suppose at some point you just have to laugh. But let's remember, when Israel had already killed 11,000 Gazans, the Times itself said, and I'm quoting it, the justification for that killing was in part the claim of the command and control center beneath Al-Shifa. So 11,000 people perish in part because of 2 flush toilets.
Now,
2 flush toilets.
UNRWA was
and now 250,000 children in Gaza are facing, as we're talking now, famine conditions because Israel alleges that 4 or 5 of them were involved in October 7th. It just takes your breath away. What goes on? And then they have the audacity to attack the backwardness and the primitiveness of the Houthis. Yes, by Western standards, they're backward.
Well, they don't have any gay bars, Norm.
But
You don't have gay bars, you deserve to be genocided. Don't you know that?
I would take one Houthi to the whole of the senior staff at the New York Times. A Houthi has more heart, more pity, more compassion than those monsters who day in and day out churn the lies out, knowing that hundreds of thousands of children are facing death by famine. What a sick, sick place. No, really, sick.
Well, this is
I pray each day for the Houthis. I do. They have become my last hope. I have a whole bunch of T-shirts now. Houthis are forever. Houthi for president.
Are you selling this on your cafe press shop?
They're certainly better than the Green Party.
I don't know where you came up with that line, but it's a good one.
This has been a long time goal of Israel to dismantle UNRWA.
That was the third reason. I said the first reason was to distract attention from the ICJ opinion. The second reason is they're sadists and they want to kick somebody in the teeth, but they can't do it to the ICJ, so they do it to the children of Gaza. And the third reason is because UNRWA is the institutional embodiment of the Palestinian refugees. And if you get rid of UNRWA, then they just become these kind of nondescript refugees. They have a kind of amorphous status.
Right.
Because UNRWA, its founding was to serve the Palestinian refugees. I can't remember the history right now, but my memory is, and I don't want anyone to quote me on it, you just have to check yourself. I think UNRWA was originally founded for the Jewish refugees from World War II. And then it became the institution for the Palestinian refugees. But don't quote me on that. That was what my memory tells me, but it could be from a long time ago.
That makes sense, because from the research I was doing, it was established in 1946, before the Nakba.
Yes, I think so, but I don't want to be quoted on it. In any event, so they figure if they can eliminate UNRWA, they can eliminate the refugee question, because that's its institutional embodiment.
Well, in a bit of perversity, Netanyahu, in that clip we played, claimed that they are creating the refugee situation, that UNRWA is creating it.
Just like it's those Hamas teachers who are creating the hatred of Israel.
Right.
You know, you really need those teachers. I mean, because otherwise, while your father is being executed, your mother is being bombed, you're starving to death, the rain is pouring on your plastic, and amidst all of that, Isn't it obvious you would love Israel? I mean,
of course.
Isn't it just obvious that every day you would be praying for the safety of Israel? And if it weren't for those those classrooms and those textbooks, you would be loving Israel? Isn't that just plain as day?
Yeah, hate is learned. That's what they tell me.
Hey, come see us do a live stand-up show. We're going to be in Omaha, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Lansing, Michigan, Bend, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Philadelphia, Avenel, New Jersey, Boston, Palm Springs, and more. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets. See you at a live show.